Hey everybody, it's me, Wes, with a trusty coffee in hand. Hope you're doing well. It's May. It's gonna be May. No, it's already May. What that means is there's this little thing called May Sketch a Day, which is a fun, kind of an exercise. I believe it was created by Thomas Scholes, a fantastic artist, an illustrator who's done work for like Guild Wars and just tons of beautiful IPs and incredible stuff. And basically, the goal is every single day of May, you go ahead and you do a sketch. So, what that looks like could be anything. You could be just practicing a certain technique, or you could be doing a sketch from imagination. You could be doing a master study, just some sort of artwork every single day. And I really like doing May Sketch a Day. I've done it probably the past 2 years. No, 3 years. I did it in 2019 as well. And it's a lot of fun. It's very cool. It's a great way to try new techniques. So you can do everything from like working from imagination, like you'll see a few of these right here, which I've done. I think today's the 20th, and I just finished number 17. I had some family issues come up, so I had to not do a few days. But I think I'm going to knock those days out before the end of the month. So that way I'll still have the 31, 30, 31. I need to check. I don't have a calendar handy, so. But I'm going to do those. And yeah, I'll do essentially one a day, or number it out to be one a day. But yeah, you can use this for anything. I think it's a very powerful thing just to know, and I know we talked about this last time on the video, from working from imagination. It's nice to know that even if today's doesn't turn out as good as you think it will, or as it should have, or something like that, you have another day. You have another painting the next day. You have another study, another practice. So you're never too hard on yourself. You just keep going. Just quantity. Just throw them out there. Good practice. But I actually had a request. So I want to say it was either last year or the year before. I did this study of a sculpture, and I got a lot of people that say that this might be my favorite piece of mine that they like, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you. But also a lot of people asking, how did I do it? Like, whoa, how'd you do what this is? So what I wanted to do is, I want to say it was number, let me look right here, number 15. I did another study of a bust, and it only took a few hours, but I recorded the entire process. It's already done. We're going to watch it back in real time while having the reference down at the bottom, and we're going to take some real-time notes on kind of what I did. Instead of the time-lapse stuff that you're normally seeing of like a 3 or 4 hour long painting, this one, I think just this first part, we used Art Rage Vitae, which I'm a big fan of. We can record a script in here, so we're going to watch that. We're going to talk about it. I think it takes about 25-ish minutes, so we'll do it in real time. And I think that'll be a lot of fun. And then I do want to show I finished in Procreate, and we're going to talk about why later in the video. But I wanted to kind of set the expectations. So we're going to go in real time, going to talk about some problem solving, kind of what was going through my mind. Why was I doing a certain thing? Why did I put a certain brush stroke there? Like that sort of thing. Just go through the problem solving of it instead of just the overarching idea of sketching, which we've already covered on the channel. I thought it'd be interesting to look at a sketch in real time, and because I'm not working, I can just narrate the whole time. So we'll see how this goes. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. But without further ado, let's take a look at May Sketch a Day number 15 of a master study bust in Art Rage Vitae. Alright, so here we are. So yeah, this is Art Rage Vitae. I basically recorded a script, and I'm going to be playing it back. You can see the play script button right here. But also, I have, we have PureRef open. And this is the actual reference image. It's a pretty sizable image. Pretty big. So what I wanted to do is, I wanted to kind of mentally crop everything. I'm making it perfect squares, so the resolution I'm working in is 1500 by 1500. It's 72 dpi, which is made for web. None of this is going to be in print, so it's quick, it works fast. Yeah, 1500 by 1500. It's a decent size to get good detail with brushes if we make the brushes pretty small, but you can do some big brushes and it won't bog down your computer either, you know. So it's a pretty good size, and since it's perfectly square, it's going to work on a vast majority of social media, so like Instagram, Twitter, and then it even is going to work well I'm doing weekly posts on ArtStation, basically collecting 7 pieces at a time and throwing them up on there. I think week 1 and week 2 are already done, and this was the first one of week 3. So before we get started on this, I want to look at what my goal was. So whenever I look at something like this, like how do I tackle a study, especially if I only have like an hour or two to really kind of dig in. It's not going to be a stroke for stroke thing. I'm not interested in making it look as photorealistic as possible, because the photo already exists. And this is actually from Ravina Tran. She is a movie director now and producer and stuff, but she used to be an illustrator, full-time illustrator working for Dungeons and Dragons, Wizards of the Coast and stuff. But she went to a museum and took all these beautiful pictures. There's hundreds of these busts and stuff, and these are great to fall back on because you get to study form, you get to study light and color and how it all kind of intermingles with something that's very stoic. So it's very classical in nature. So it's a lot of fun. But my main goal on this, I really like this silhouetted edge, kind of that nice pronounced nose right here, how the lips are coming in, and you'll see, kind of zoom in. I don't really get it super well because it's going to take a lot of time, but these forms, like how the forms are kind of folding over in the top lip and how it's kind of coming in, and you see the shadows and you see the stuff right here, like that was the stuff I was interested in. Would I be able to get nice chunky brush strokes while also keeping something somewhat refined within kind of the bust itself? And that was the goal. So yeah, without further ado, let me go ahead, let me make this a little smaller. That way we'll always have this on screen. I think I cropped it kind of like, I think it was like that. Something like that was the crop. Let me bring that down. Somewhere in between there. So not this zoomed out, but not this zoomed in. So we'll do that. But the cool thing is we can drag this around and stuff when needed. So yeah, let's go ahead and let's play this script. So what I've been starting to do is do a little more rough and tumble sketches. You all know me, I don't do very clean line art, but I'm coming to peace with that. I think it's actually good. And something that I want to talk about, I'm a fan of the Loomis method as far as making a skull, but normally with that you make a perfect circle. But what I've found doing these kind of sketches, I'm really liking how it looks to do more of the egg shape, like an egg laying down on a table. Because you'll see here, there's kind of this circular, you know, it's more of an oval up here. And then you have the rest of the form coming down of the structure of the face. And it already sells the angle a little better than if I were to try to do a circle, sphere, and then just try to get it ratioed okay. You can see I actually kept this kind of forehead line to kind of cut this in half, and I used that line kind of going across here to place my other landmarks. So the eye socket, the nose, you can tell the angle's a little off. I think I put this eye a little too far forward, so it looks like this is closer to a profile than this was, which also probably explains why you'll see in a bit that I kind of had a little struggle with this. But for, you know, in Art Rage it was only like 25-ish minutes. So this is how I work in real time. You can see that I had this straight line coming down to kind of give me a guide. where I would like come straight down here, and then I would put the relationships of the dips and the kind of nooks and crannies and the shapes in relation to that line. I'm realizing that very basic shapes are helping me landmark way better. And now I'm starting to put in that collar. But you can see it's not clean line art at all. I have big swooping motions kind of here of the folds. There's an energy to it, and I think I like this. I know it's not the most refined thing in the world, but I want to talk about this because the next video I'm going to do, I have kind of a new method of working, and this mixes a little bit of that. This was me kind of dabbling in it, but not being quite confident in it yet. But now I've done a few more of the sketches. I'm actually doing some of the stuff on more refined Warhammer work, and I'm really loving it. But basically what it is I put in color midtone, but it's monochromatic. So here I kind of do the way I used to do it, mixed with that new way, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. Also, you see kind of the chaos, let me zoom in here, chaos of the hair. No way was I wanting to like count the strands of hair and try to get the clumps and stuff. There just wasn't enough time. So I just thought, hey, waves. It's wavy, and it has like 1, 2, kind of 3 layers. So you can see here 1, 2, kind of the 3 layer where his chops are right there. I also wanted to get in these lines. I think these lines are really cool to build visual interest, and plus it frames him within a frame. You know what I mean? Like we have the canvas, which is a frame, but then you also have these lines. Like Ravina is super good. I mean, she's a director and cinematographer, for God's sake. Like, she knows how to compose a shot. So I wanted to keep that. I think that it just works well, and you can see the value differences. I wanted to try to capture those as well. Kind of the rough and tumble background. Kind of keep that rough and then keep that bust a little more refined. Everything's in relation. So this doesn't have to be, the face doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. It just has to be smoother than the rest of the painting. Does that make sense? Like, that's kind of how everything in art works, from what I'm finding. Okay, so here we go. Now we're blocking in kind of the midtone. I chose a gray. It was kind of a warmish gray, because I noticed some of the warms in where the kind of the shadows were. So I used a kind of a big blocker brush. I think I call it canvas blocker. If you're on my Patreon, I think I put these brushes up, God, a little while ago, probably 6 months ago or so. But you can see I'm just kind of playing around with the midtones and then kind of introducing little variances of color. So I'm using the color wheel and I'm tweaking the hue. So I'm like going around the color wheel a little bit. So it's keeping the same value, like the same darkness and lightness, but we're getting a little bit of variation of our hues in there. So I'm kind of going in and, like you can see right there, just really kind of blocky, chunky strokes, but it's a good way to start putting in light. And it's not exact, it's just as rough and, you know, rough and ready as, and big strokes right there, rough and ready as the sketching is. It's not clean. See that I had that right there. I could even undo that, but I just, whatever. I'm gonna paint over it anyway, you know. And it gives, what I'm noticing is it's giving stuff character. It's giving the piece some character. You can see I'm kind of going within the lines there, but we start blending in a minute. So I still have the blocker right here. I wanted to keep that light panel right here, pretty light. And it's already starting to come together. I knew at this point that I would probably be happy with the outcome of this piece, because this is something that you could send an art director as far as like, hey, how's the mood on this? How's the color? How do you like this? And be pretty confident that you can just push this to final. And that's what I kind of start doing now. I want to say I only worked on 3 layers. I only worked on 3 layers. I worked on the sketch layer, which was the top layer, and I had that on multiply. That way, no matter what I put underneath it, the line art's going to show through. And then I think later I go in and like lower the opacity, or I completely get rid of it. I can't remember. And then I worked on kind of that big square canvas block-in layer. And then what you'll see, you'll start seeing some really thick brushes here in a minute. So what I do, because Art Rage is so good at mimicking kind of wet on wet media, I duplicate the canvas underpainting layer. So I duplicate it, so we're starting with a layer that has visual information on it. Then I get my thicker impasto brushes and work within what's already there. So the reason why I make a duplicate layer is that way if I don't like where it's going, I can just delete it and start over, but I'm not missing out on anything. You know what I mean? So it's kind of nice to separate the steps in that way. Be like, okay, here's my sketch, now here's my underpainting, now here's my kind of thick brushwork. Then on top of that, you know, if I were to push it to final, it would be more, you know, it would be more like, oh, well, detailed work, smoother brushes, really get some crisp edges in there. And then you just kind of work over and over and over and over. And that's kind of a spoiler for what next week's video is, but very much an iterative method. Almost you're glazing, but you're glazing everything. You're glazing in color, you're glazing in shapes, you're glazing, like, think of it more as you're barely putting a layer on top and barely, you know, just small little changes here and there. But then they start adding up and they start adding a lot of depth. Here I just have a quick kind of a smudge tool that I'm going and I'm smudging some of this background into itself. So you can see it, you know, it loses some of that character, I think, but we put it back in with thick brushes here in a minute. But this is just a good way to kind of cloudy up the background, kind of bring it out of focus. And yeah, I like that. I like mimicking like a camera's depth of field with my paint. So like if I want something in focus, I will get really in there with a small brush and really kind of carve away at some shapes with really high contrast. Because that's where I want someone to look. So if it's the most detailed and it has the highest contrast, it's always going to draw the eye of the viewer. But if something's out of focus, if something is not the thing that I want you to look at, I will go ahead and make sure that it is not smudged out, but, you know, not as detailed. It's not as nuanced. It's not as... It might be interesting to look at, but it's not as clear to look at. Because that way your eye doesn't feel fatigued. Because if everything was highly rendered, you don't know where to look, and it can get kind of weird. What I always like to think of is, if you're reading a book, your eyes are focusing on the word you're on, or the word after the word you're on. You know what I mean? And then you just can see a few words around there. But the rest of the book and like the outskirts of the pages and stuff are completely out of focus. That's how our eyes work. We just hone in, we do that. So I like painting in a way to mimic what the human eye does. Get one area of hyper focus, and then the rest of it falls away. As you get further away from that focal point, your brushwork can be whatever it wants to be. Another thing that I like on that same line of thought, and what I'm kind of doing here, is I'm actually, as I'm putting these strokes in, I have a wispy brush, but I'm looking at the eyeball of my statue. All I'm doing is I'm looking at the eyeball, and then I'm color picking around the outskirts to make sure that nothing is catching my eye that shouldn't be. So I stare at my focal point, and then I'm like, okay, does anything jump out at your peripheral vision? If so, get rid of it. Or like loosen it up, or kind of smudge it down, or you know what I mean? Like make it not as bombastic and not as eye-catching, and the piece works better for it. Yeah, I don't even think I've added the thick brush strokes yet. I think I might be here in a minute. I do have a smoother brush, and I'm going in and you can see I'm kind of carving the stuff of the face right now. and just kind of getting a few of those nuances and stuff. And now I'm kind of working on that jacket, smudging in some of the stuff, trying to find some interesting colors. And then now I'm kind of going around that nose again with a darker flat brush, kind of really wanting to start pronouncing that contrast between the really bright ridge of the nose and then, okay, here's a thick brush stroke. So you can see I started on the collar because the collar has all this like ornate detail right here. I didn't want to paint all this. So I was just like, hey, why don't I just build visual interest by doing really thick brush strokes, and kind of mimic visual interest. I don't care about what it is, I care about why it is. So this is very thick brush strokes. You can see some more right here, just to kind of bring in some fun. And you're gonna notice that since my sketch layer is on multiply, you know, we can still see the sketch is kind of a coloring book, to put our brush strokes over. So yeah, now here's where I kind of come in and I start color picking and just doing horizontal streaks. And I've been doing that more and more lately. I really like how it looks because it's interesting to look at. You see how we're kind of working up. It's interesting to look at, but it also, if you're not focused on it, it really doesn't draw your eye all that much because it's almost like a gradient. And I dig that. I think that's going to be a thing that I do in a lot of my stuff. I really like that idea. Because, you know, whenever... there's two trains of thought when you're a painter. Either you want to not show any brush strokes at all. You want everything to be pretty smooth. You'll notice this on like League of Legends splash art. They don't want a single loose brush stroke. Not a single one. They want it very tight, very highly rendered. But then on the other side of the coin, you have it to where it looks like a painting. And that's where I fall. I want it to look like a painting. I want you to look at it. Okay, and see, now I turned off the sketch layer just to kind of see how we were doing as far as shapes and silhouettes and stuff. But anyway, I'm very much a painter. I like the idea. I want you to see the paint strokes. I want you to see the problem solving. Like, I've always found it interesting. Maybe you could look at the painting and do the painting yourself, because you could see maybe the order of the steps. I think there's something really neat about that. Like, that's why I love looking at Anders Zorn and John Singer Sargent and, Degas and Sorolla. It's almost like you can interpret what they're doing and you can also do it yourself. And that's empowering to me. I think it's really cool because it just makes me want to paint. I'm like, oh, I think I could do that, or I could do something like that. And it makes me really want to get in there. So now I'm adding some lights on the hair because, once again, I didn't want to do all those curves and all the swoops and all that stuff. I think I do some of them, but I'm using the texture of the brush to give me that visual interest. And you'll see we're still working pretty loose. You know, we're still working loose. So I lowered the impact of the impasto effect on the face. Because remember, I wanted to keep the face kind of smooth relative to everything else. So that's why we're putting thick brush strokes everywhere except for the face. We want the face to be smooth. We want it to have that nice kind of marble stone look. So that's kind of what we're doing. Now I'm going in with a tighter, I think it's a dagger or a filbert brush, and doing quick little outlines, like around the chin, around the mouth. I'm starting to get some of these shapes in to sculpt out that front form of the face. And yeah, I can tell here that I'm in a pretty good spot. Like, even if I were to stop right here, it would be okay. I wouldn't be happy with the eyes. I wouldn't be happy with how kind of the hair is sitting on the head and stuff like that. But, you know, it's good enough. It's better than good. It's good enough. And yeah, so now you can see I shut the, I keep shutting off the sketch now because I want to see, I'm comparing it to the reference. I'm looking like, okay, where are we? Like, percentage-wise, how far are we? And I think here we're about 40% of where I want it to be. But, you know, we're at a good spot. Like, this is great. You can take this, easily, you can take this into Photoshop right now. And just by color picking what's already on the palette, you can bring this to a completion that any client would be happy with. But since this is May sketch a day, I want to stay fairly loose and fairly non-committal, because I want to see what's the most important part. What are the things? Okay, now I'm really working kind of on the face. If you look where I'm carving those shapes in, I'm really kind of looking at these angles. So right now I think I'm kind of working on that silhouette right here. See, some of the brush strokes are so small. Like, okay, like the nose. Like, I'm trying to get that shape of the nose and kind of putting these highlights in the mouth. And what's nice is as you zoom out, you know, and it doesn't show me zooming in and out, but that's kind of what I'm doing right now, which is why some of these brush strokes are super tiny. I don't even know where they are right now. If you can find them, it could be like, hey, a guessing game type stuff. But yeah, I'm changing the angle of the nose. Oh, it's by the mouth. Okay, I see. Starting to add some more highlights. So I think I'm either color picking this white or these colors right here, which is kind of the yellow, kind of the lemon yellow, really soft pastel-y yellow, as far as the white, and kind of blend it in. And that's what I'm starting to put as far as the highlights. And yeah, so like forehead stuff, starting to kind of bridge the gap on some of these shapes. But this is how I did the other one. This is how I did, this is actually exactly how I did the other one. At this point, now you just render. You just go in, and there's no two ways about it. It's just you go in with different brushes of different consistencies, color picking, making sure your values are right. Something that's really cool, I didn't do it this time, but Pure Ref, which is what I'm using right here, has a really cool feature where you can right click, and if you go to canvas, go to grayscale, it removes all the color, and then you can do like a value study. So with this one, I wanted to do a value and a color study, which is why I kept it in color, because I wanted to see the subtle relationships, like how this is a nice warmer, almost like a brown, but it's very light. It's very light. And then you have your kind of more intense, cool gray, cool brown type stuff right here. And then you have your, you know, more of your blues right here. And it's funny because my thing, this is brown, but I don't know why during my painting I saw it as purple. I think I like keyed in on this type of thing, like that kind of middle hue. And I think I keep it purple, I'm pretty sure. But this is it. I mean, there's that saying, there's a rule called the 80-20 rule. And there's different interpretations of it, and it actually works in a variety of different instances whenever you're dealing with a painting. So the first 20% of what you put down on the canvas should end up being 80% of your final. Okay? Then 80% of your time is going to be spent on the final 20% of rendering. That's usually what that ratio, it's almost like a recipe, how that is. So really, this is what the painting looks like. The painting is essentially done. Now you have to go in and do these, you know, I'm doing the collar right now and doing the sharp edges and trying to find, okay, if the light's blowing out, what does that mean as far as the edges? Can I smear the edge and make it be the same thing? Or in order for that to work, I have to make this edge sharper. I start doing that sort of problem solving and like going around the head, doing thicker brush strokes. I think I start carving out more of the the torso of the bust here in a minute, because I notice, you know, I have the shapes kind of right, but, you know, I need to get some highlights right here, so like over here, and then kind of rim light right here to go over where the form goes in. So that's the type of stuff I'm looking at right now. I'm like, okay, the shapes are there. I'm pretty pleased with the proportions. The eye still needs some work. You know what I mean? But it all kind of needs some work. I think that's the point. Even disbursement of information. I think I saw myself working in the hair just then. I don't know where. Where are we at now? I don't know. That's the thing, is like looking on it back this way, I can't tell exactly like where I'm at, but that's fine. But yeah, like the collar. Oh, well, the collar, huh? The collar is something I'm really kind of pleased with, because you can tell there's detail, but it's not this detail. It's not. I'm not going in and drawing the flowers and all the like petals and the. I'm not worried about that stuff. I do see some of these lines here, and I did want to get, you know, kind of that medallion, kind of the emblem right here, kind of get some of the highlights in there, just show a variance of what the material is supposed to be. And then I think I also come and I do kind of this lip of the collar here in a little bit. I either do it here or I do it in Procreate. But you can tell I'm like doing smaller, thicker impasto brushwork right here, to where you got this jumbled piece of information where these folds are kind of going in on themselves. It's all, that's a very John Singer Sargent thing to do, is like compare things and see what has detail and what doesn't. And if something has detail, do some brushwork on it. You know, make the, it's almost symbolic. It's truly impressionistic. Is there the impression of detail? If there is, use thick brushes, let that paint kind of carve out those shapes. You don't have to be super technical with it. You can just be kind of willy-nilly. As far as your values are right, and as far as kind of the amount of information is correct, you're pretty safe. Yeah, okay, now we're going in with the hair. Now I have a thicker dagger brush, and I'm coming in, and now I'm doing the swoop shapes. So they're not exactly the same shapes that I see, but I see that it's kind of like an S, kind of a tall, lanky S shape. And you'll see me do some C's, some S's, a lot of curve shapes. Just try to block that stuff in. Getting in more of, you know, elongating this cheek highlight, stuff like that. So yeah, it's not an exact likeness, but it's pretty close. It's good. It's fine. You can tell what it is, you know, and that's the important part. I'm getting less and less worried about being exactly perfect to a reference, and just using it as a guideline, using it as a map, and then kind of doing my own journey through it. And you'll notice whenever I'm working on the background, I'm still working with thick brushes. I just like that look. Now, what I do is, because there's a lot of thick brush work on the bust right here, and then like the shoulders and stuff like that, everything immediately surrounding this, I end up smoothing out. I end up going through and either like doing a palette knife and kind of smudging through it, or kind of just getting a blender brush and just going in and blending it. That way, right before our main focal point, we have an area of rest around it. Yeah, I think now here, yeah, okay, so here's some, I think I'm doing some palette knife blending right now. A good analogy that I usually think of whenever I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to smooth out the area right before an area of interest. Oh, well, that's it. But to complete that thought, and now that we're here, we're actually in Art Rage. So now what I can do is I will, let me go ahead, let me load my tools here. Boom. So now we can keep working, okay? And what's cool about the playback is like I can put this on my Patreon, and if you have Art Rage, you can download my playback, play it in your Art Rage, and then you have the painting and you can start working with it. So let's say I want to kind of smooth out these areas right around here. I can do that pretty easily. I got smudges right here, but here we go. That's the smudge I'm looking for, is more of a wet blend. The analogy that I think of, to go back to this point, in a movie, in like a scary movie or an action movie or something, if they really want your if they really want your attention, what they're going to do right before a big explosion, a perfect example of this is in Lord of the Rings. I want to say it is either Two Towers or Return of the King. An orc is running, and I think he's like a suicide bomber, and he has a torch, and he runs and goes to an explosion. Like he runs to go ignite himself or ignite these bombs and blow a door open. What happens is it's a very loud scene, and he's running and like all the big battle stuff is happening. He jumps into where the bomb is, and the sound designers mute everything. They completely take all the sound away for about 1 full second, and then a super loud explosion. So you feel the impact of it. What we're doing is kind of that same thing. So while we have all this crazy loud brushwork everywhere, oh, big action scene, you know, all this stuff right here, if we want to temper it down right before the explosion of more brushwork, this is where we're going to come in and kind of smooth this stuff out. Kind of coming away. Does that make sense? And this, and what you're going to notice, let me make it a little smaller. What you're going to notice is it makes the statue, the bust, look even more detailed, even though it's not. We didn't change the bust at all. We changed what's around it. Remember, art is about content, guys. It's about what are the relationships between edges and colors and you know, brushwork and all that stuff. Where is brushwork and then where's not brushwork? We'll go and get to that in a minute. But I'm gonna come in here. You kind of get rid of these impasto brushes, and then I can come in here with like custom oil. I'm gonna pick that color. Get rid of these. You know, and this is basically just how I work. You know, get those lines in there. Get some of these in here. I can just keep painting now. Which I already completed this painting. It's already done. But just to kind of show you in real time what I do here. And then any of the smoother edges. So you can see kind of where we have this type of thing. And then if we want to kind of incorporate that, then I'll come out again with this smudge palette knife and kind of mimicking the direction of the strokes. We're going to kind of do the same thing here. And then you see how we see these kind of bigger brushes right here, the impasto strokes. Let's say I want to get rid of those, really smooth this out again. Just come in with the kind of a blender. You can even do a smudge tool if you're using Krita or Photoshop or whatever. But see what I mean? And then you kind of go around these edges. That way there's still a little bit of interest. But this is much smoother than the stuff around it. Here. And then as you kind of zoom out, you see what I mean? So it's still reading the way it's supposed to in relation to everything else. But yeah, May Sketch a Day is a lot of fun. What I will do with the last bit of music and stuff is we'll show the Procreate process. I think the recording's a little lower quality, but it's the time lapse. So really what I'm finding in Procreate, and the reason why I wanted to finish in Procreate is twofold. Number one, Let me come over here. Oh, there we go. Number one, I need to get more practice with Procreate. I like using, or I need to start liking using the iPad. Kind of using that more intimate feeling of like having a thing right up close to you and doing this. It's a little bit better than kind of the long extended work of doing things on the workstation monitor. But also, something that I'm finding really helpful about working on the iPad and Procreate is the ability to zoom in. So I zoom in a little bit when I work like this, but I like to keep things fairly zoomed out. That way I'm doing big, loose brushstrokes, as you guys saw. But with Procreate, it almost begs you to dig in. And I think that's what I need. I think I need to really get that refinement phase well. And by really zooming in and doing smaller brushwork, even if it's thick brushes, doing the smaller or like almost like inking with paint, I think it's going to be good for me. I think it's going to push to the next level. I think we're going to really level up from that. But yeah, so May Sketch a Day is all about just doing a sketch every single day, whether it's a technique sketch, a master study, value study, colors. It doesn't even have to be of anything. It can just be, hey, I want to use these brushes. So I'm going to make some abstract piece of art, use these brushes, smudge some stuff, kind of figure out how this all works. It's really a level up month. It's a month where you can really push yourself, you can really hone your techniques, and you can really kind of dig in and figure out what works best for you. But that's my time this time. I hope you guys dug it. We'll see the Procreate video here in just a second. Then we'll kind of get some good zoom in and all that fun stuff of the finished piece. But like I said, it took less than 2 hours for this whole thing. Yeah, I don't spend a ton of time on these, but what I'm noticing is because I'm trying new things, I'm getting further faster, and we have a video about that as well. So you go further faster, which means it's taking less time out of your day. You get to the render part faster, which means the time you're spending, remember how we said that 80% of the time is spent on the last 20% of the painting? There you go. You want to make sure you're really utilizing that last 20% to the best of its ability to really push to final. And that's it. But let me know what you think. Are you doing May Sketch a Day? If not, why not? I'm interested. It's one of those things that it is a different mindset. So once you get in that mindset, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I actually try to do a painting every single day of the year, which is easier said than done. But I mean, over the past few years, I've been pretty consistent. I've easily done over 300. So with that type of number, you're going to get better just because you know your tools better, you're more comfortable with them, which is why we jumped into Procreate. Just kind of get over that learning hurdle, and then you just start making the stuff you want to make. But have a happy May. Next week's going to be a fun one. We're going to talk about the new style. It's kind of a game changer. It's an easy change that I'm doing, but man, it's making a huge difference. So I can't wait to share that with you all. But until next time, take care of yourselves, be good to each other, and we'll see you next time.